All right. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for participating in that viewing. Hope it was able to work for you. I found it very good on my end, so hopefully it was successful for everybody else. We have our filmmakers actually with us here today as well, and I just wanted to remind everyone that we have a Q&A that is going to a Q&A feature at the bottom of our screen. You might see the little tab there. You want to click on that and write your questions in the Q&A field, and we will try to get to as many of your questions today as possible. So we have David Wayne Reed with us today, and we have, yes, I'm sorry, I got messed up on my script. We have David Wayne Reed here from Eternal Harvest. We also have Kimberly Girkin, who was the star of her film Wildflower. And Angela Deng is here from Climate Strike Sunrise Movement to talk about that today. I just want to, if I can, guys, I just want to sort of from each of you hear a little bit about who you are. David, I know you told us a little bit of your background and what inspired this film, but maybe if especially Angela and gosh, I'm just having a meltdown on my brain here. Kimberly and Angela could talk a little bit about how you got involved in the film. So if I can just hear from like David, Kimberly, and then Angela, just a little bit about who you are, what's your background in filmmaking especially, and how you got involved in this particular project. Dave, how did you get into film? Because I know your stage. What segued you into thinking, I want to really tell this story in a film?
My nephew got a drone. I mean, it really came from that tragic day on the farm and us messing around. I mean, honest to God, it was the most kind of, my mom will make the costumes, my dad will build the set, family hands-on affair. It's my first film. I didn't know what I was doing. I was very fortunate. I applied for a rocket grant from Charlotte Street, and they support experimental works, and they really like to support artists that are taking on a new direction, and that changed the course for me. I've been to several film festivals, and I still feel like I still go and I wonder, how the hell am I here, but I'm very grateful for the experience, and I'd rather hear from Kimberly and Angela, actually.
We are going to be able to talk with you and Leslie, another one of our guests. Leslie is the district manager of the Miami County Conservation Office in Miami County, Kansas, and she's going to join you a bit.
Yeah.
So you'll have a little bit more time on the back end. I do want to make sure we do hear from Kimberly and Angela. Kimberly, how did you get involved in this film? And have you been in films before up to this?
Yeah,
time?
so I would love to start off by acknowledging that the filmmaker for Wildflower was Emily Harris, and she is amazing. She was not able to be here today, so I was very excited and honored to step in. I did help write this awesome story that I think did turn out to be a really fun time. I hope that everyone enjoyed watching it. So yeah, I am primarily an actress, but I do also do a lot of writing. I am actually currently participating in the 48-hour high school screenwriting contest this weekend, so that's been exciting. Yeah, this was one of the first short films. I think this was like the second short film that I'd ever acted in. I've also done a little bit of work out in LA now, which is exciting. And so we did this film with the 48-hour film contest back in August, and you're assigned like a character, a line of dialogue, and a prop that you must use, and then each specific group also gets 2 different options for genre that they have to do. And our group was given the options of drama or climate film, and we're all like, oh, climate film, that's interesting. And everyone was very about to hop on just like drama, but I actually did really suggest like, hey guys, I think we could actually do something really impactful here, and because I personally I'm a high school student, and I am I am the vice president of my environmental club at school, and I am I actually am a vegan, like my character in the movie. So yeah, excited to be here and answer questions. Thank you.
That's what I was going to ask you. So you do feel this way already. This didn't necessarily doing this didn't necessarily change your position. This is something you've believed in for a while. I'm assuming. Yes.
Yeah, I've been a vegan for almost a year now. So yeah.
Wonderful. It's interesting. The narrative and the comment it's a narrative film. The message is coming across as a narrative, not a documentary. The choice made to tell this very powerful message, to show a character who takes action, who is disillusioned and takes their own action using the tool of the person who inspired them, is a very great direction and message. And congratulations. How was the process that you and Emily worked as writers together?
Yeah, so at 7 o'clock on a Friday night, we were given the genre and the requirements, and you're not allowed to have any pre-writing before that. So basically, we had our team, and we went. We were at this fun little cafe at the plaza, and all of Friday night we were just brainstorming, and I helped out kind of with the knowing about the climate aspect, and they were more they knew about what would work for like shooting locations and stuff, and we already had exactly what actors we were gonna have, so that helped. And then Connor Upgrove, he played the brother. He actually wrote the script. So, and then that was sent out late Friday night, actually probably Saturday morning, and then we shot all of Saturday, and then it was edited Saturday night and turned in on Sunday.
Wow.
Is your perception that people your age are more like the Wildflower character or more like the other character?
I think it very much depends. I'm very thankful to have met many people that are kind of like Wildflower. I think my generation is very inspired by the media and by people that we encounter. And I mean, I know I personally have kind of gotten to this point from knowing friends that have, been interested in saving the environment. So I do think a lot of youth today are like Wildflower, and it's important that we make sure they're getting the right information.
Wonderful. Angela, I'd like to ask you, what you're part of Sunrise Movement. How did you get involved in that, and what inspired your film?
Yeah, so it was actually not very planned, the decision that I decided to be part of this movement, because I'm an international student from China, and this is my 4th year in the States, and I'm in high school. I'm a senior, and I've just been, studying and then learning new stuff about this new culture, right? And then there's one day a friend of mine just asked me, hey, there's a climate strike happening in the plaza in the afternoon, and I heard about my friends going on strikes, and we're thinking about going, if you want to go with us. And I was like, of course, why not? Because I've seen how bad the environment in China was, and I was very concerned about how the government's gonna work to solve this problem. And I've seen many examples of how environmentalists are working in China. So I'm very interested in how it's gonna work out in a different country here. So I was like, sure, I'll go, right? So we hopped in the car, and then we went to the plaza, and then my friend brought a camera and then a little microphone with him, because he was supposed to do a kind of report for our school. So we went, and then we heard the speeches, and I just felt very moved and empowered by all the speeches that were given by a variety of people. I think there were people running for governor. There were high schooler that, like the one I featured, his name is Gavin. I actually know him from this activity because he was doing such an amazing job at the plaza, and so I decided to shot more like pieces for this whole strike, because I felt very just empowered, and I felt very moved by the passion of people that were trying so hard to do something for the environment, for the earth. And I And so I was thinking about, okay, so what can I do to help them out? Because, I'm an exchange student. I don't really have much resource here, but fortunately, I really like photography and film, and I am going to college for film as well. So I just took my friend's camera and I just started shooting. And I also interviewed one of the members at the Sunrise Movement. I was like, hey, could you talk about this activity and what's going on here? Because I'm really interested. So yeah, so that happened, and I went home and I put all the pieces together, and I showed it to my school, and then I also sent it to Sunrise Movement. I posted on my social media. And so I think a lot of people got to see this piece in public, and the Sunrise Movement just like they connected with me, and they were like, hey, are you interested in coming to one of our activities and check out what it's like? We want you to like make more films and maybe cooperate with us in the future a little bit more. So it's like, that's so cool. Like, of course, yes. So that's kind of how I got hooked on to this movement, and I also met a lot of people in the movement. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to a lot of the meetings for later because, first of all, the virus situation, and second of all, I was in my time for college application, and that just kind of like filled out my schedule. But it was really still very, very cool to have the chance to help out the movement and be part of it. So yeah.
Wonderful. And we're going to talk to Jesse Hill a little bit later, who's part of the Sunrise Movement and can tell us how to get involved. But where can people learn more about Sunrise Movement right now? How can people get involved right now in Sunrise Movement? Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, and I did just drop a link to all panelists and attendees.
Okay.
You can join us. We have an open meeting coming up tomorrow from 6 to 7:30, and that's going to be put on by Sunrise Kansas City, which will give us a pretty good overview of what we're doing and how to get involved with us.
Wonderful. I really thank Kimberly and Angela for their films. Thank you so much. And we're getting a lot of great comments and a lot of great response to your films. And good luck to you both. And thank you so much for stick around with us, please. But I wanted to just segue a little bit into David here and Leslie Rigney. Leslie is a guest who is going to be joining us from the Miami County Conservation Office in Miami County, Kansas. And is she there, Leslie?
I am here. I can't
see you. You look great.
There we go.
All right.
Yes. Hello.
Hi, Leslie. So Leslie is joining us with David Wayne Reed, and David just showed his film Eternal Harvest. Hope you got to see that. If you're just checking in with us, we're going to have a few more Q&A for David and Leslie. We do have a question from an audience member, Bill. David, can you talk about use of circles and symbolism in your film, the circle of life concept?
Sure. Well, as I said, I attend Temple Buddhist Center, and I had been reading in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and in the Bardo, and so I was aware of that symbolism. And you start to see it in all things, including seeing it even in my grandmother's quilts. And so it's a sacred geometry that I don't think, I was looking for ways that some of those Eastern philosophies and symbols are replicated in our Western rural communities. And it wasn't too hard to dig and find those similarities. I don't know. Did that answer the question?
I hope that answered the gentleman's question. We'll see if he typed in. I just wanted to ask you a couple that I was thinking about. The Earth is the canvas. Very interesting idea, because on one level, it's showing the working of the earth, the toiling of the soil, the uprooting. So there's that element. There's the farming element, but there's also the beauty and the poetry and the subtlety. And Earth is the canvas is a very interesting idea. Is that something you, as a person, look at a lot and see the visuals of that?
Absolutely. I mean, what was so great was being immersed in it and going out to the land, every couple weeks and seeing the land shift over time. And you start to develop a interdependent relationship. And it's really easy to film because it's so picturesque. It's always changing. It's really the best muse. I mean, it can be a really difficult muse with its different weather patterns, which, that affected using the drone in some cases. We filmed every day from I think our coldest day was a high of 8 degrees. Our hottest day was 104. And so really we were just with it, and you learn to be with the earth and really accepting of all of its beauty, from the harsh aspects to the very lush aspects. And it always delivered.
And Leslie, how did you come to be involved in the film?
Well, so I was less involved in the film that we just watched. I was very inspired by that film. I grew up in the same place as David, so I'm the Miami County District Manager, which is where his family's farm is. So I've known his family forever. But at the time that the film came out, we were just starting this really special project where we are working with prairie remnant owners in Miami County on conserving their prairies. So maybe 100, 150 years ago, 70 to 80% of our county would have been tall grass prairie. And now we're left with just these itty bitty remnants, 10 acres, 20 acres, maybe at most 50 acres. So we've been working with these landowners, and one of the landowners that we were working with is David's dad. His mom and dad have a tiny little prairie remnant south of Lewisburg. And his dad, I had heard about the movie, but his dad insisted that I get a copy of it and watch it. And over the course of, visiting with several of our prairie landowners, lots of us who were working on the project thought there is a real story here to tell. We need to find somebody to tell this story. And then David's dad said, you have to watch this movie. And I knew then that I wanted to work with David on something about these prairies. So I love his movie, in that he, in the conservation world, we're working in kind of everything that we present to the public is very science-based. It's very factual. And I love that I just love what he did with that movie.
Thank you for saying that, Leslie. It struck me, Leslie told me something early on, you can connect. A lot of people talk about, the rural versus the urban. And one thing I really noticed with doing Eternal Harvest, people of all different kind of perspectives come together when it's of the land, and you don't connect it to politics, I guess. Like urban and rural environmentalism works very differently, and I got a taste of that when I was filming. And Leslie reminded me of that kind of difference and how we close that difference. And it's oftentimes environmentalist progressives, myself included, we're like, but these are the facts. And I feel like you can kind of connect and reach across political and ideological divides. We have to start doing that through our heart rather than our brains and our mouths, and find those different ways to connect. And that's what really made me very excited when Leslie brought this idea to me. It was literally in my backyard. It was literally on the back 40 of my parents' farm, and it was only one of the only spots that I did not include footage of when I filmed Eternal Harvest. That was all filmed on my family's farm with a drone and a phone, and that is the gospel truth, as ridiculous as that is. So it was great to come back and find that.
Yeah, you had the set right in your backyard, which was nicely convenient.
Very convenient.
Someone one of our attendees asks, and this is something I wanted to ask you as well, if you could speak to the soundtrack. This person asked, did I hear the Methodist doxology quoted?
Yes, good ear. So I collected just sounds through my own recordings on my little Canon point and shoot digital camera and on the voice recorder on my Android. That's how I got all of the sounds. You did hear the doxology. That was the congregation of the First Christian Church. I was sitting in between my parents in the second pew, and I put my phone under the pew and recorded that to get that. I also recorded my dad and the poem that he reads. It's always kind of the tearjerker moment of the piece. I tricked him. He said, "Hey, I've got this poem that I think you should read." And I was like, "You read it." I was just real sassy. I'm like, "You read it." And while he was looking at it and putting on his glasses, I hit record, and that became one of the most special moments of the film for me. I did have a composer. It was his very first film that he ever composed. A bunch of first timers here. His name is Bo Bledsoe. A lot of people know him. He is really just he's such a top-notch guitarist. And when we were developing ideas of what the soundtrack, what I wanted the score to sound like, I think with rural kind of agrarian things, it's easy to go toward country western. But I wanted to fuse both Eastern and Western, and I said, let's do something country Eastern. And so you can hear that kind of in the plinks of the guitar. You know, it's like what I said earlier. It's like moving the needle just a little bit, you know. But Bo, I would work with Bo a million times over. He can play anything and do anything. Really, he's the silent hero, one of the silent heroes of Eternal Harvest.
Country Eastern is a whole new genre I look forward to.
I'm a pioneer. Pioneer didn't even know it.
I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions for any of our panelists on any of the films, our panelists are still, and our filmmakers are still here. So if anybody wants to ask them anything about what you've seen, go to the Q&A tab below your screen and click on that and type in your question. We'll try to get to it today. I wanted to ask you, David, a bit about the metaphor possibly in the beginning of the film, your first image, the graveyard, the tombstones. Is there anything that you were trying to suggest in the opening image?
Yeah, that new life starts at death. I mean, that's where we kick it off. I mean, it kicks off with a death. I mean, it's almost like a 6 Feet Under episode. But that's where the story begins. That was taken, every shot was taken on my family's farm except for that one, and that was taken on my grandparents' farm that my cousin Mark now lives on, and that's our family cemetery. It hasn't been used since I think the last person buried there was in the maybe 40s or 50s, but that's literally our family graveyard. And that shovel has a really interesting story that I didn't know. When we sold off my Aunt Orpha's estate, I got this shovel that I knew was my grandma's spade. And my grandma was a big gardener, and I was really inspired by, her and my own gardening practice. And when I showed my dad the film and showed him that image of that spade, he said, "Was that your grandpa's spade?" And I said, "Yeah, it was." And he was like, "Well, your grandpa Prettyman was a grave digger for a while," and that is kind of, but that was really cool. And there were just all sorts of things like that happened. But yeah, just that idea of like, we often think of, we start at the beginning at starting with planting, and then harvest, what if we flip that and that becomes a little bit more elastic? That was part of my catchline in the beginning, from the shovel that digs to bury to the shovel that digs to plant. At space in between, focusing on that those parentheses.
Wonderful. I have another question from an attendee, Sarah. Who made the quilts in the film again? They are so beautiful.
Oh, well, on behalf of my grandmothers, thank you. My grandma, both featured, I think most of them featured in the film were my grandma Prettyman. She was the more prolific of the two. My grandma Reed was pretty prolific too. But I think for my grandma Reed, it was more social. She did the community, the cool thing be, and I think it was a little bit about gossip too. But my grandma Prettyman made the bulk of those, and she must have made hundreds of them in her lifetime, because when she died and Aunt Orpha died, we went through the house, there were still 100. There were still 100 remaining. It's crazy. And, initially I wanted to just set up the quilts as prayer flags in the prairie, like on a giant clothesline, and let them blow kind of those blessings into the air. And I wanted to use my nephew's drone to just, really, I saw it first as a art installation. And then my nephew got this drone. We drove to Colorado. We had a high time in Colorado. We developed some ideas, and here we are. And that's a little bit how that came about. But thank you for saying that about my grandma's quilts. They're beautiful.
I can't remember in the credits, the editing, was that you? The physical editing of the film?
It was me. I'm responsible for the clunky parts. My friend my friend Steve Gardels, who's a really solid collaborator and great guy, he helped me with some of the harder stuff. But that was mostly me.
Was that your first time figuring the editing software? Was that your first time working with editing on that level?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed because I'm so aware of my limitations. I figured it out. As I move into the second film, I feel like I'm better able to delegate and understand how to delegate. But being the first film, I had to figure out, I had to dig in with my own shovel and figure out what's what. And just, I think it helped me that I was so stupid and naive, and I didn't know what not to do. So every option was available to me. I think knowing what I know now, if I went back and was like, I'm just going to go make a film, I'd be a little bit more.
I was going to comment on how great the editing is. I don't think it was funky at all. I think your editing is great.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That really does feel like kind of my Achilles heel, but I really thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Jerry. That means a lot. Sorry, that's my cuckoo clock.
Uh-oh. Well, it's real life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Leslie, I wanted to ask you something, and David. What do you both feel people should take away and come away with after seeing this film? What do you think that is, Leslie?
I love that we can look at agriculture and the rural landscape with a more artistic and heartfelt lens, instead of, especially I've worked in a lot of other sectors, but in conservation and environment for a long time. And especially in this area, there's a big urban and rural divide, especially in the, political world and in the conservation and environment world. And when you see a film like that, it lets you kind of step outside of your really strong positions and just kind of relax and appreciate the beauty of the rural landscape and of agriculture and as a process.
Mm-hmm. David, what do you want people to come away with?
I want people to come away with hope, that our Earth is resilience, and and death begets new life. And I think it's ultimately a resurrection story. It reminds me of like one of the things I love most about these terrible, weird, unprecedented times that we're in right now is like how much the air pollution is going down, how the canals are running so clean in Venice. And it reminds me of the resilience of Earth, and it gives me comfort that even if humanity doesn't make it, the Earth continues, and there's a real solace in that. And I hope that that's explicitly reflected in the film as well.
Wonderful. And I believe we're going to show, David, I wanted to ask you about things that are upcoming for you. Did we want to show some clips with that as well, Bob?
If we have time, we can show one. I think it's titled Jewel in the Crown. One thing that I'm really struck by, and I don't know if we articulate it hard enough, but is that one of the most endangered ecosystems in the entire world is in our backyard. It was literally in the back 40 of our farm, and it lays in these remnants. And a lot of that, I tell people that, and they're like, I didn't know that. And I'm not mocking them, I'm mocking myself. I didn't know that. And, you know, a lot of westward expansion, a lot of colonization, and industrial agriculture and westward movement tore apart this very vital ecosystem that only 3% of it remains, and it's all in these fragments all around us. And we're very lucky to have something that really goes back, an ecosystem that goes back billions of years in our own backyard. And so, and seeing the flora and the fauna that exist within those ecosystems is also its own magical thing. And I just think, you know, we need to really think locally, and decimated ecosystems are not just the Amazon jungle. They're also right here. You know, nothing against the Amazon jungle. I mean, but we can act locally, especially now when we can't travel. We've really got to be better land stewards of what we've got. This clip.
And were you going to, did you want to show us a tool? Okay.
I'm sorry?
Oh, did you want to show us the clip? That's what I was.
Well, I can. I'm trying to figure out my dumb screen and where to go to do my do my thing. If we don't have time, that's all good. People can go to my Vimeo account. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, I think we'll have to. I'm so sorry.
Well, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you have coming up then, and not only just this, but in general for you in your stage, and what is David Wayne Reed doing in the future?
Well, stage has definitely shifted for the foreseeable future. You know, I'm looking forward to learning this new world of how we communicate and how we set up these individual, you know, sets and performance spaces. We're all performing now. And setting and lighting matters. I'm figuring that out on all these Zoom calls, but figuring out how art works, and specifically performing arts and theater, and how that can work in the space. Because I don't know when I don't know when I'm going to feel comfortable to go back into a crowded, small space. So figuring out how art can also be resilient and be reflective of these times. I'm really looking forward to running to the country, being in stay-at-home mode. It makes me clamor to get out to the country and get out to these prairie remnants and really spend some time in that space that I consider sacred and rejuvenating and very inspiring, while also working on this film. I really want to get very micro, whereas Eternal Harvest was from this bird's eye view and very drone sweeping approaches. I really want to get down into it. I'm digging in the dirt. I'm building my victory garden. You know, those are kind of self-help, self-care, creative things that I'm working on now.
Wonderful. And Leslie, you're going to be financing all of David's future upcoming projects? This is what I hear.
You heard it here.
Money in the environmental field is just coming up. Well, hopefully we will help. In the past, we've had a Kansas Humanities Council grant to do a film before in our county, so we hope to maybe pursue something like that.
There you go. See, Dave, we linked it up. You got your funding now, Dave.
Well, I think there's a real opportunity for artists and municipalities to work together and collaborate in new and meaningful ways. And I can't think of anything that's more pronounced of the times and of the zeitgeist as our environment. And, you know, how can we collaborate, artists with environmental arms as well as medical arms, emergency arms, and really come together in really new ways. I saw an article coming around the other day about the New Deal and what kind of artistry that really helped move forward. And I think it's time to think about a model where, some of our greatest artists came out of that. And I think it's time to revisit that model and maybe not just use it in times when times are more harsh, but for all times and in a perennial way.
Well, wonderful. We had a compliment from Joe. Thank you, Joe. Joe wanted to thank all the filmmakers and people associated with the projects today. I also want to do that as well. And you guys are all fantastic. I really appreciate this. And as I said, we're still trying to get our message across, even though we're taking on this platform. But we really found it important to still show these films and so get the message across. And thank you so much to Bob Grove for giving us this opportunity.